Episode 3, TPA, which is Temporary Parental Agreement. As always, before we start today's episode, please visit www.fight-the-4.com so you can find updates about the show, figure out when my trial date is coming up as well, and also there is an opportunity to donate because, as you all know, or for many of you who are in the same situation, it can be a substantial financial burden to have to keep fighting through all of this. And it's a chance for you to see upcoming episodes, what's on the docket for upcoming episodes and what we're going to talk about next. Hope you enjoy the show. Episode 3, TPA. Before we get into today's subject, I'm struggling. I'm struggling on how to get into this story. I have young children. And those guys, I want to talk about them, but I don't, only because I don't. This is their story too. Um, I want to protect them. I think that's a parental thing. I just want to protect them from all of this. And a lot happened during the time when I first separated to this first court hearing for TPA. Right, COVID happened, which was just mind-boggling, especially going through a divorce. And also, I still have supervised visits. I'm still not done. This is still ongoing, and that's the struggle. I don't want to come across as angry and blaming and all of that, but it's hard. It's really hard. I see my kids very limited, and it's just really painful sometimes to have that experience week after week, and it wears you down mentally because it's just uncalled for. And it's uncalled for because of so many false accusations and allegations of abuse that just didn't happen. And I, waiting this long to tell this story and express how I feel, I think for me is probably more therapeutic than holding it in. But I also want other people to know that you're not alone. That this happens, and I don't think this is unique. I think this is pretty, unfortunately, sometimes, people may find themselves in this situation more often than not. And this situation it's easy for me to see because my ex in this situation had a lot of childhood trauma that was never resolved. And I think when the situation happened between us, it was triggering for her and it was never dealt with. So all of that trauma bubbled up and was projected onto me. And because of that, I suffer. And one of the greatest pains of going through this situation is when anybody sees me with the children, they see children that are happy and they are in, it's like nothing happened. And I don't understand it. It's really hard for me to comprehend. Yesterday, my youngest was on my arm, watch this video, dad, 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 dad. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, let's do it, like, and they're asking me all great questions, and it's like they don't skip a beat. And then I only see them for a limited time, and because of the trauma of my ex, like they have to go call her to check in as if something like is going to happen. And that is all just projection. And people ask like why do I stay in the fight so long? Like, and the boys have therapists, and I talked to one of the boys' therapists, and I distinctly remember her telling me that it's okay to give up. And I wish I could tell you all like that I was this noble guy and from day one never had any doubts, but I definitely have had big moments of doubts. I mean, this is financially draining. This has tapped every ounce of income that I've had or have, to the point where I'm forced to make a lot of decisions around what do I do with my life, only because I can't afford to do anything. Like, this is just, and this is part of the strategy, right? But it's still exhausting. And I remember this therapist telling me distinctly, I've had parents write me a letter that I will read to their child to express why they will not continue this fight. And I'm not, I don't know, I'm not I don't think there's anything noble here. At the end of the day, is it, am I fighting for my own ego? Am I fighting because I was so wrongly accused that I'm just trying to clear my name? And the answer is no. I'm fighting for my children because at the end of the day, I don't think I could live with myself knowing that I gave up, that I turned away from them, even as much as they act so different when they're like in front of her around me. They act cold. They say some pretty cold things to me that they don't know. It's not their fault. It's just hard. It's really hard. It wears you down and it's painful. But at the end of the day, I just, as much as I am absolutely in a financial struggle right now, and I'm doing everything I can. My house is for sale, my car is for sale, everything is for sale, just trying to fight for these children. And I can't do it. Like I can't, I'm gonna have to be forced to walk away from this by something else other than me because I think the pain of knowing that I stopped or I didn't continue on for them would be too great for me to bear. I don't, it's such a hard decision. And my heart goes out to anybody who's made that decision because I know it wasn't easy. It's hard and I get it. Like there's so many times where I wanted to turn away from all of this and not deal with it and just be like, okay, I'll wait till they're 18. But money is a lot. It's really important. But the one thing that my ex took from me that I can never get back is time. And I miss the moments, the natural moments that aren't forced, where, you're just hanging out with each other and not particularly forced to do anything. You're just the natural vibe of what's happening. And that's been taken from me. And that makes me incredibly sad. There's days where it just hurts more than others. I've done a really good job trying to balance these emotions so they don't come out sideways, but they do sometimes, and I'm not proud of those moments, and it's hard. And during discovery, I learned all that, and then when it came to our first court date, which is, once again was in July of 21, in the middle of COVID, right? Things had shut down. My job was now fully remote, so I was forced into solitude, living in an apartment by myself, which was good and bad, right? It was good because it really forced me to deal with a lot of my own trauma, right? I mean, it's if there's trauma in your life at some point, you have to deal with it, or else it comes out sideways. And this person, my ex, chose never to deal with it, and it just kept adding on. And it's unfortunate that anybody has to go through trauma, but there's a good way of handling it and a not great way of handling it, and it never was handled on her part, so it just came all out, and I saw it during the trial. I saw it during our court date. It was when the temporary parental agreement came. I had taken her to court. I filed for it because she was starting to withhold the kids from me, and she just wasn't playing nice. And the signs were there. The warning signs were way back. She was the type of person that when she fought with someone, she would just shut them down and she would attack. She would attack. And she did it to her family, she did it to her friends. And I never thought it was going to be me because why would you? You're married. But it became me. And when we walked into court that day, I saw her with her note cards just rehearsing everything. I was like, who does that? Like, this is so she knew all the questions and, she was rehearsing for them. And her attorney just tried to attack me left and right. And the allegations were just so obnoxious. I was accused of insurance fraud. I was accused of stealing her car and selling it. I was accused of stealing money. And these are all things that, you allude to them in court just to present the picture that this person's not good, even though none of them have real, weight behind them. If I was convicted of, if I was arrested or if I like got caught stealing insurance money, I'd go to jail. It's a felony, a car, felony. Like these are all things that erode a person because they attack their character. And what they do is you can't like always go back and fight every single one of these because it costs you money. Because every time you try to fight one of these things, you have to produce documentation. And I did. And then you have to like fight it with your lawyer to go against their attorney. So every move you make costs you money in this situation. It's a business. So instead of, fighting all of those allegations, I just said, you know what? If you think I'm such an unfit person or unfit guy, let's go through a forensic evaluation. And that comes a little bit later, and we'll talk about that experience. But in terms of the TPA, I got torn apart. I was eviscerated on the stand. This attorney, opposing counsel, just came at me with everything, used every ounce of health information they knew about me against me. My therapy appointments, which it was convenient enough that my ex attended, was all used against me. Because, if you say something like one of the questions that drives me absolutely bonkers is, do you like when you go into a mental health profession, when you go see a therapist and they ask you, they always do a checklist of how you are to understand where you are in life and to see what needs to be happened. And whenever you get into a really deep conversation with a therapist, they ask, have you ever thought about killing yourself or suicide? Now, I think about suicide in a way that's existential because I am an existentialist. This is what I do. I study this stuff. I read these things, Camus, Sartre. I've read them. I study them. I love Kierkegaard. Like I just study all of them. And they wrote, Sickness onto Death, No Exit. These are great pieces that talk about death and suicide, and that being the ultimate expression of humanity is the ability to take your own life, and what a choice, right? And so when anybody asks me that question, I say yes. Now, the follow-up question is, well, have you ever done anything to, engage that? And I was, no. The answer is no. And that's my answer. But when the opposing counsel just harped on it and just said, well, you think about suicide, you're a danger to the children because you're suicidal. It's like, no, and that's when it really dawned on me that I had been played right from the start. Like, that's why she wanted to attend all of the therapy sessions. That's why she was seeding all of this. That's why she was mentioning depression and all these things, because in this moment, she thought she was going to have a slam dunk and, try to, number one, show that I was the suicidal, abusive person and that I was a harm to the children. And that was her MO. And it was so apparent during that time. The judge, and there was multiple judges in our trial, in our case. I think it's turned over 3 times. The judge heard all of this information, and what he decided to do was, schedule visits. So I had visits. They allotted time on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays for me to spend time with my children, and we were going to figure out all of this stuff before we settled on an official, custody. And that's when the forensic evaluator was played and brought into the picture, because at that point I just couldn't fight all these things all the time. It's exhausting. And I had no problems suggesting a forensic evaluator. As a matter of fact, I found one in our area. And once I found them, I gave the name to my attorney. And I reached out to the individual. And the individual, not only having a PhD in forensic psychology, also has a legal background. So he immediately said, "Listen, thank you for reaching out to me, but I need to talk to attorneys first, and it has to be mandated by the court." So once I found this person, I was quickly taken out of the picture, because then that person just dealt with the attorneys, and now that person's hired by the court to look into this. But after that, after the TPA, after that all went down, and I my ex didn't really get what she wanted, I knew this was going to just be a battle. I could see it. It all really came out during that time. And during that time, I made the decision, you know, I could I could fight it. I could fight all the little things, but I didn't really have the money to do that. Or I could spend all of that time, because I was really angry. I was really mad. Um, I got really sad during that time. It was COVID, it was summer, starting to become fall. And yeah, at that point I already had child services involved. She alleged some allegations of abuse, so she reported it, and child services came and they dropped the case, right? Because there's nothing. And I would also it's not funny, but I also had child services calling me again down the road, right? Because anytime anything would happen, she would blow it up and, try to get their teachers involved and stuff like that, so that the kids would actually have to say it, so that way child services could investigate me. So I was investigated twice by child services, and both cases were closed. They offered a parenting class, which I took, which was fine, but both cases were closed. The evaluator looked into that as well. But these are the types of things that come out of these situations. So I could see that she was really trying to build a case. And that's the reason why I'm driving everyone to the website, is because I'm not asking anyone to take sides here. There's two stories, right? There's my side and then there's my ex's side. And I'm sure she would tell an entirely different story. But here's a chance for everyone to get involved. Here's a chance for people to see what it's like to go through one of these cases, a high conflict custody case in court. Once again, the whole point of the title of all of this, Fight the Four, is because 4% of all high conflict custody cases get resolved by a court. A judge who doesn't even know me, a judge who doesn't even know my ex, is going to make a decision about the future of my children based on information that she's requested, which are the forensic evaluations. I also have an alienation expert. So I'm completely prepared to go into this and really expose what happened, because, what I didn't do a very good job of was, I'm a very private individual, which may seem weird since I'm telling all of this, but I think the only way that I can really persevere through all of this is if I am completely transparent. And that's kind of the thing that I told myself as I was going through therapy, which is discovery rips you apart. Like, it looks at everything that you do from a financial and, health type of situation. And then there's a lot of things that I'm just private, and I didn't want all that information out there because it is part of the public record now. But at some point, you just have to own it and say, okay, if I'm going to go into this, I need to be completely open to everything. And that's dealing with a lot of things that were very, very uncomfortable for me, such as privacy, such as admitting a lot of the mistakes that I made and owning them. And I think that's the key. And that's where the line between my ex and myself is very different, which is I took the time to really unpack my own baggage, my own trauma, and deal with it. And because the other person refuses to, and I'm not quite sure she has the support around her to really want to do that, when everyone's telling you to go fight and do this one thing, it's hard to stop that and say, oh, well, maybe I should focus on me and really figure out my story and what I'm doing and all of this and what I want out of all of this. Because ultimately, what we both want is irrelevant. What's best for the kids is if both parents are legally able to and emotionally able, and that's what the forensic evaluation is determine whether or not you are a capable parent. If both of us are capable parent, and we are, then the custody shouldn't be a problem. But it's only when there's undealt trauma that's brought into it, where it's projected upon me, that it just becomes completely irrelevant. It's no longer about the kids. And it should always be about the kids. I'm not asking for anything crazy. I want 50-50, and that's my goal, because I believe kids need both parents in their lives. In this situation, these children need both of us. And I think there's things that both people bring to the table that this world is hard enough as it is. It's scary. It's just difficult to maneuver and navigate. And having more people involved in bringing up children it's just better than having it all to yourself. And having it all to yourself may be the case if the other person is dealing with a lot of stuff that maybe they need to take a step back from parenting and go focus on themselves for a while, figure themselves out, and then come back into the parenting scene. That's totally okay. Drug addictions, all of these types of things. If someone's abusive or all that, yes, just stop, go focus on you for a while, get yourself in a great place so that when you come back, you're coming back into a place that you can completely accept and own. versus trying to fight through it, and because it'll come out sideways. So during the time that the TPA was initiated, that's what I did. And it was hard. It's not over. It's never over. You still work through things as it is. I'm still working through yesterday, right? Yesterday I saw the guys and my heart just breaks. It is so sad, right? Like just having these kids love on you and they miss you. Like I can tell they miss me. They don't have the words, but they can see it and I can feel it. And they feel it too. And we pick up right where we left off. We have great conversations. And then to have that just be taken from me without justification is so painful. So forgive me for being a little bit darker today. Um, I try to wait 24 hours after something to respond, and especially when I'm exposing all of this. I don't know if anyone's ever going to hear this. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen in May, which is what the trial is scheduled for. But I don't know. I think it's the best I can do right now. So thank you for listening, if anybody is, and visit www.fight-the-4.com. You can find out when my trial is happening, and you can get some updates as well as see the show schedule, what I have next, and we'll start there. So talk to you again in a week.